The former president is continuing his campaign of retribution, trying to oust the Republican House members who voted for his impeachment. His latest target is his most high profile yet, Congresswoman Liz Cheney. Former president threw his weight behind one of her Republican challengers in the primary, and as he does that, he continues to tease another run for the White House. Top advisor Jason Miller says the chances of him actually entering the race, and I'm quoting here, are between 99 and 100%. And the ex-president is lining up rallies in what would be key states in another White House run, scheduling one in Georgia later this month and in Iowa at the beginning of October. One person who knows him quite well is his niece, Mary Trump, author of the new book, The Reckoning, Our Nation's Trauma and Finding a Way to Heal. And she joins me now. So, Mary, good to have you on. You see these moves by your uncle. You hear what his allies are saying. Do you believe he's actually going to try for another bid at the White House?
I think the chances are a lot better now than they were immediately after the election because he got so humiliated. I did not think he would put himself in a position to lose again. But the machinations of the Republican Party in terms of increasing amounts of voter suppression bills that they're trying to pass in every state, plus their willingness to push Donald's second big lie that the January 6th insurrection didn't happen or wasn't a big deal or the insurrectionists were actually great patriots, leads me to believe that he may decide that if he runs, he won't lose. He also has a lot of incentive to get back into the Oval Office because it would protect him from the criminal charges and the civil charges being levied against him.
He's also raised, based on the election lie, he, put out all these feelers for money from people, and a lot of people sent in a lot of money to him that he can use as he wants to, as he sees fit.
Yeah, listen, Anderson, I think the question, will he run, is unfortunately a relevant one, and it's one we need to grapple with. But what is an even more important question is, why is he being allowed to make that choice? This is somebody who incited an insurrection against our country. And I understand that President Biden is responsible for the current response to COVID, but we need to be really clear that the reason we're in this position right now is because governors like DeSantis and Abbott, who seem to have absolutely no concern about their constituents, who place absolutely no value in human life, took their cues from Donald. So why is he even being allowed to run if indeed he does?
Based on your knowledge of him and you're a trained psychologist, I'm wondering what you make just of the hold that he continues to have over the vast majority of Republicans in this country, and how much of that relates. Yeah, I mean, what does it surprise you, the hold that has remained, even though he's been, not really in the public eye? I mean, yes, obviously he shows up on Fox and he's started doing rallies, but I mean, he's been relatively silent.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me because the reason he's continuing to be relevant is because elected Republicans continue to allow him to be relevant. If on November 7th, they had ignored him and conceded that President Biden won the election, we wouldn't be having this conversation because he, like every other one-term president, would have faded into the background. But they're keeping him relevant. They're continuing to empower him, and they're continuing to ask for his endorsements, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't surprise me when you see Republican governors following Donald's playbook and, asking for his permission and conceding everything to him. Why shouldn't millions of Republicans who followed him this far continue to put stock in him?
According to ESPN, the former president has announced that he and Donnie Jr. are going to be providing commentary for a boxing match at a Florida casino this Saturday, which, of course, is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Viewers will have to pay $49.99 if they want to hear him and his son call this match. I don't know what experience they actually have. I don't think they've ever actually been in a fight. But does it surprise you, even by his low standards? I mean, if another former president decided to spend 9/11 commenting on a boxing match on pay-per-view, people would the heads would explode.
Well, that is indeed the problem. That's been the problem all along for reasons that are very difficult to understand. There is a completely different standard that Donald's held to. In fact, he's held to no standard. It's disgraceful. And if there is no blowback on the right for this, disgraceful isn't a strong enough word to describe what you just mentioned. Then that tells us everything we need to know about the current state of the Republican Party. And it tells us that the Democrats really need to start wrapping their heads around the fact that this is not a party that can be worked with. This is not a party that should be conceded to.
In your new book, you talk a lot about trauma, and you have the name is in the title of the book. That's how important it is. Do you think that that's a word that describes? It's an important word. Do you think in describing American history, and more important, your uncle's rise in 2016?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, this country was born in trauma. In the genocide by white settlers of the Native American population, and the genocide and enslavement of the African population. And we've never dealt with that trauma. So it's been passed down from generation to generation. And then in the last 4 years, we have dealt with an onslaught of attacks against immigrants, against people of color, against women, against American democracy. So here we are. And honestly, one of the most diabolical things Donald did in that last 4 years was divide this country at a time when we most needed to be united. And that's when COVID started. And it's going to take a very, very long time to recover from that, as we see, because people who follow him are making it almost impossible for us to get a hold of COVID, to get a handle on it, to overcome it. And the violence and the rhetoric vis-a-vis mask mandates and vaccination is getting so out of control, it's dividing us even further.
Yeah.